وأن توفر حظي من كل خير أنزلته، أو إحسان فضلته، أو بر نشرته، أو رزق بسطته، أو ذنب تغفره، أو خطأ تستره. يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، يا ربي يا رب، يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي، يا مالك رقي، يا من بيده ناصيتي، يا عليما بضري ومسكنتي، يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي. يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، يا ربي يا ربي يا رب. أسألك بحقك وقدسك وأعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي من الليل والنهار بذكرك معمورة، وبختمتك موصولة، وأعمالي عندك مقبولة، حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها وردا واحدا، وحالي في خدمتك سرمدا. يا سيدي يا من عليه معولي، يا من إليه شكوت أحوالي. يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، يا ربي يا ربي يا رب. قوي على خدمتك جوارحي، واشدد على العزيمة جوانحي، وهب لي الجد في خشيتك والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك، حتى أسرح إليك في ميادين السابقين، وأسرع إليك في البارزين، وأشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين، وأدنو منك دنو المخلصين، وأخافك مخافة الموقنين، وأجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين. اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فأرد، ومن كادني فكد، واجعلني من أحسن عبيدك نصيبا عندك، وأقربهم منزلة منك، وأخصهم زلفة لديك، فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك. وجد لي بجودك، واعطف علي بمجدك، واحفظني برحمتك، واجعل لساني بذكرك لهجا، وقلبي بحبك متيما، ومن علي بحسن إجابتك، وأقلني عثرتي، واغفر لي زلتي، فإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك، وأمرت بدعائك، فإليك يا رب نسبت وجهي، وإليك يا رب مددت يدي. Towards thee, my Lord, I extend my hands. فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي، وبلغني منايا. Grant me my wishes. ولا تقطع من فضلك رجائي، واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي. همه با هم. یا سریع الرضا، سریع الرضا، یا سریع الرضا، اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء، فإنك فعال لما تشاء. يا من اسمه دواء، وذكره شفاء، وطاعته غنى، ارحم من رأس ماله الرجاء، وسلاحه البكاء. يا سابغ النعم، يا دافع النقام، يا نور المستوحشين في الظلام، يا عالما لا يعلم، صل على محمد وآل محمد، وافعل بما أنت أهله. وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله وسلم تسليما كثيرا. بساحة مقدسة حضرت ولی الله العصر صلوات.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So tonight's discussion will have some sensitive content. So everyone who is under 16 is requested to go downstairs into the Madrasa Hall. There is a special youth program, kids program, for anyone who wants to participate. So I recommend anyone who is under 16. If the parents, after the fact, feel that the discussion was pertinent for people under 16, then they're free to be able to talk to them about the things that have been learnt. But otherwise, anyone who is under 16, please do go downstairs. Jazakumullah khair. This is for both brothers and sisters, okay? Sayyid, you can stay, right? Yes, of course. For all of our marhumeen, on this Thursday night, let us begin with the recitation of Surah Al-Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. Sirat al-ladhina. Sadaqallahu al-'aliyyul 'azim. You'll need a number of ayat, so please open your Qur'ans. The main one that we'll be looking at, or the first one that we'll be looking at, is from Surah Al-Rum, chapter number 30, verse 21. You'll need another 3 or 4 ayat as well, so please have your Qur'ans open and available. But if you start there with Surah Al-Rum, verse 21, this will help us to be able to go into our theme for tonight, inshaAllah. For the love of our 8th Holy Imam, Ali ibn Musa al-Rida, let us have a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين سيدنا الممجد بشير المصدق المصطفى الأمجد محمود الأحمد أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين واللعنة الله على الظالمين من الأولين والآخرين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه المجيد وفرقانه الحميد وقوله الحق. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ومن آياته أن خلق لكم من أنفسكم أزواجا لتسكنوا إليها وجعل بينكم مودة ورحمة إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يتفكرون. آمنا بالله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Awaited Savior of humanity, Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam, respected scholars, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Our discussion tonight is to honor the Wilada anniversary of our 8th Holy Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Rida, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi. Allahumma salli ala. We extend our congratulations to the awaited Savior of humanity, Imam al-Mahdi ajjalallahu ta'ala faraj al-sharif. Allahumma salli ala. And we ask Allah Jalla Jalaluhu to grant us the ziyarah and the intercession of our 8th Holy Imam fi dunya wal akhirah. Whatever hajat we have, Ya Allah, tonight accept them bihaqqihi, on behalf of Imam al-Rida salamullahi alayhi. If you look at the corpus of the ahadith of our 8th Imam alayhi salam, you will find that there is a large chunk of narrations to address the topic of marriage and family building in a way in which he appears to cover this topic much, much more than many of the other A'imma alayhimus salam. Of course, the vast majority of our jurisprudential narrations come to us from our 5th and 6th Imams, alayhim as-salam. Nevertheless, by comparison, our 8th Imam, alayhi salam, has spoken, or the ahadith that have reached us from his narrations, have reached us with many traditions regarding a multitude of issues regarding marriage and family building. Some of them, of course, are sound. Some of them, of course, are not sound. What I want to be able to do tonight is to be able to think with you about maybe 2 or 3 issues and bring them together in one discussion. Number one, as we continue our journey to understand the Quran and make sure that we think in accordance first and foremost with the Quran, I want to be able to demonstrate to you sometimes the gap in some of our narrations when contrasted with the Holy Quran. And I want to show you that if we don't understand the narrations well, or if we pick up bad habits from the narrations, instead of being able to understand matters from the Holy Quran, often it can have a great moral deficit upon us. And the way in which we can understand our religion can go deeply astray if we misunderstand narrations or take narrations that are clearly incorrect. So number one, the emphasis is always on showing us how to be able to utilize the Quran in the very best way. Number one. Number two, in a similar vein, I want to show you how on social media you will find that there are many, many hundreds of thousands of videos from Muslims that are distorting the way in which relationships should be held between husband and wife, between family members. And I'm going to show you some as examples of what is in popular circulation on social media, especially in Muslim circles. And what you'll see is that the ways in which Muslims speak about very sensitive and important topics often are so shallow and so cheap, and worse still, that when our youth grow up and expose themselves to this world of Muslim social media, they can often misunderstand the importance of the sanctity of some of these issues. And in turn, the way they digest these matters and then live these matters is as shallow as what is being presented to them by many Muslim influencers that are out there. So I want to show you some of the content, number two. And number three, you know better than me, one of the greatest epidemics that is within our community is the difficulty of marriage between husband and wife. How often, sadly, in our communities we are facing the trial of seeing marriages break down and the way in which husband and wife treat one another. And I want to be able to address from the Quran and from the ahadith of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam the attitude that they expected us to enter into marriage with, and also the ultimate goal of marriage in accordance with the way in which the Quran has presented it to us. If we are able to understand the difference between how the Quran presents this to us, how sound narrations present this to us versus unsound narrations, and the way in which we are seeing, sadly, this scandalous representation of marriage in Muslim circles, in Muslim online circles, versus the way it should be, then I hope we can go some way in addressing this problem that exists within our communities. We know that within our communities there is a large breakdown of marriages. There is domestic abuse by 99% done by men to women. And these are things that we need to be able to address from the pulpit. We need to be able to have very frank conversations between us. Now, the reason why I asked the children to be able to leave is, number one, I'm going to read out to you 2 hadith that are very sensitive. The language in there is very sexual by its nature, and as such, for younger ears and minds who are not yet ready to understand this, it is not suitable for them to hear directly, unless you as parents have first heard it and you decide that you want to be able to express some of these issues when they are ready to understand about these. Number one. Number two, I'm also going to show you the kind of things that are mentioned on social media. And again, if a youth is not ready to understand, they may not be able to differentiate between right and wrong. They might digest the language, they might digest the sort of attitude that is being presented. And obviously I'm trying to avoid that. You, mashallah, are obviously mature, discerning adults. And you can understand what I am trying to convey to you. And then if you feel that your children can be showed this majlis when they are ready, you at least are armed with the knowledge of the Quran, ahadith, and what is going on outside in order to make those decisions for yourself. Thus, tonight, it's a serious majlis. I know we are celebrating a wilada, so I'm going to try to ask for lots of salawat in order to be able to make it a little bit wilada-esque. But other than that, sadly, it's more of a serious discussion in order for us to be able to understand something that is important within our community. So for the love of our 8th Holy Imam, Ali ibn Musa al-Rida, please recite aloud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I'm going to start with this text, which is available in English. So the reason why I'm showing it to you in English is because that it is available for any one of our community members to buy. Maybe you have this on your shelves at home. And so any one of our youth can pull out this work and read what is mentioned. This is Uyun Akhbar al-Rida alayhi salam from the great scholar Shaykh al-Saduq alayhi rahmah. And in there is a number of narrations regarding the reasoning for the laws that we have been given to us. This is known as the ilal, the reasons for the laws that have come to us. Sometimes there's a law and Allah tells us, or the Imam tells us, the reason for the law is X. And sometimes we have to try to understand the reasoning, the logic, the purpose behind the law for ourselves. Does that make sense? Sometimes Allah and the Imam tells us, this is the reason why I've made this law, so you understand the logic and the ultimate goal behind the law. And so you are able to say that I am living in accordance with the goal, the maqsad, the gharad of the law itself. Sometimes we have to try to extrapolate those reasons for ourselves. We look at a text and we say, this is my understanding of why God has made this law. Of course, when an ayah or an Imam Ma'soom tells us this is the reason of the law, it is not of the same strength as when I or you deduce the reason of the law. In this book, we have a number of ahadith where Imam al-Rida alayhi salam is narrated to have said the reasons behind certain laws. One of them, which is the focus of tonight's discussion, is the following. And that is the reason behind the mahr in a marriage contract. You will know that when you get married, there is the mahr that the man, the husband-to-be, the groom, is supposed to gift to the wife-to-be. She sets this amount, and it is entirely for her. She can set the conditions as to when it is paid, when it could be deferred, the amount that it is, and we have within the books of ahadith the recommended amount. We also have the discussion as to what is the reasoning behind the mahr, right? So think back to when you got married, mashallah alaykum, and you gave the mahr to your wife-to-be. When she set the amount and you accepted the amount, in your mind, what was the reason, the illah, as to why you were giving that amount or it at all? What was the purpose of it? What does it represent in terms of the relationship between you and her? What I'm going to show you as an example is one narration which our ulama consider to be not from the Imam Ma'soom, not a sound narration, but you can see sadly how narrations like this end up being abused, taken, and actually entering into the thought processes of people, into the bloodstream of the community, and actually setting the mentality of the marriage itself. Having shown you this hadith, I want to then show you how the Quran speaks about the attitude and the goal of the marriage, and whether we can see this hadith to be in line with the ayat of the Quran, and to show us what is occurring actually on social media and the way in which Muslims speak about this very important and sensitive issue. Why? Because how you and I enter into a marriage, the attitude that I have, the respect and dignity and love and honor that I place upon my future partner will determine much of the way in which we treat one another inside the marriage. And so these sorts of ahadith versus the Quran are very important for us to know, because someone tomorrow might read this and tomorrow might digest it and think that this is the way in which Islam is expecting us to treat one another. Let us debunk some of these false narrations and then make sure that our communities don't live like we do on social media, but actually uphold the way the Quran expects our relations to be. So, this hadith from Ayun Akhbar al-Rida is the following. And as I said, this hadith is attributed to the Imam. Now, number one, this hadith is part of a much lengthier narration. And so a lot of the times the ulama will take other parts of the narration and leave parts of the very same narration. This is normal, because it could be that one part of the hadith was narrated correctly by the rawi, by the narrator, whilst another part might have been narrated incorrectly. If I speak for 20 minutes and you decide to convey my words to Sayyid behind you, is it possible that you remember all of my words? It's possible. Is it possible that you remember part of my words accurately and other parts incorrectly? Yes. So in the narration, it might be that part of the narration is sound and we take it, but it might be that other parts of the narration are not sound and we don't take it. So this part is the part of the illah, the reasoning for the mahr. Let's have a read of this. وَعِلَّةُ الْمَهْرِ وَوُجُوبِهِ عَلَى الرِّجَالِ وَلَا يَجِبُ عَلَى النِّسَاءِ أَن يُعْطِينَ أَزْوَاجَهُنَّ لِأَنَّ عَلَى الرَّجُلِ مَؤُونَةَ الْمَرْأَةِ لِأَنَّ الْمَرْأَةَ بَائِعَةٌ نَفْسَهَا وَالرَّجُلَ مُشْتَرٍ. The reason behind the mahr, the nuptial gift, and its obligation for a man to pay and not an obligation for the woman to give it, is that the expenses of the woman are upon the shoulders of the man. Correct or not? Correct. And now the Imam gives a second reason. وَلِأَنَّ الْمَرْأَةَ, the woman, بَائِعَةٌ نَفْسَهَا, she sells herself. وَالرَّجُلَ مُشْتَرٍ, and the man buys. Now think about this very, very carefully. If you were to ask a woman, when you are getting married and you are accepting the mahr, what is the reason why you are accepting the mahr? Do you think any woman would say, I am taking this mahr on the basis that I'm selling myself? Yes or no? Be honest, yes or no? No. And is it appropriate that the man thinks within his mind, I am purchasing the woman? Yes or no? No. I agree with you. On both sides of the equation of her selling herself, or the idea of her selling herself, and the idea of a man purchasing her is not only problematic, it's immoral. Moreover, what happens if a man reads this hadith, a youth reads this hadith, and imbibes it, digests it, and thinks, I am buying a woman when I'm getting married to her? What will be the outcome of that relationship? Ahsan, she becomes his property, like a slave. So how will he treat her? Like a slave. And if she, God forbid, was to also appropriate or misappropriate that idea that she is selling herself, how would she enter into that marriage? And what level of submissiveness would she enter into that marriage? The answer is the same, isn't it? Now tell me, you're a father. Sorry, I'm picking on you. You're a father to a daughter. Would you ever accept that this was the attitude of the proposer to her? No. And would you ever accept that she began a marriage on this basis? No. But be honest with yourselves. How many marriages in our societies, in our communities, be they back home or here, enter and begin with this sort of mentality? Be honest. How many? Sadly, all of them. Or many of them. Many of them. Correct? Yes? Now, if you are reading this hadith and it's in circulation and you attribute it to Imam Ma'soom, what can you do with this hadith? As a man, you can be as abusive as you want. You can enter into marriage in accordance with this narration, and you can utilize this hadith as to however you want. You weaponize the hadith of Ahlul Bayt alayhim wassalam. Sadly, online, this is the way that many Muslims are having this sort of discussion. And they're cheapening, and I could show you video after video after video, but sometimes it would be actually against the hurma of this presentation to show you some of them. So I'll show you one that is simple enough to show you how people are talking about this matter online, and the way in which it affects the relationship, the mentality between people. I'm going to show you two videos from Instagram, and I want you to pay attention to the ways in which Muslims are speaking about mahr. And when you think that your wife is nothing more than something you have purchased, or you believe that you have sold yourself to your husband, look at the way in which this becomes normalized within Muslims. So, first video Adnan is going to play is going to be in regards to mahr and the way in which Muslim boys and Muslim men, sadly, are talking about mahr in the online space. Ahsant Adnan, first video. Yes, but sadly these are young brothers who have a show and they talk about Muslim issues. Many thousands of people watch them, take their ideas. This is what happens on social media.
If my wife, from what I know now, asks for 100k, I'd pay. Is 6 months of pay. So if you get 2,000 euros, 12,000 euros. That is a reasonable mahr. I don't care what anyone says. Yeah.
Shut up, blood! I'm gonna give her a Quran and a date.
And a little kid. And a kid.
And a little kid. No, what do you miss?
If my wife, from what I know now, asks for 100k, I'd pay 100k.
But
so,
did you pay 100k?
No, I paid 50 euros.
So it's easy for you to say.
And أقلهما مهرا
أكثرهن بركة.
Yeah.
So just play it again, just because I want people to make sure that they understand what's being said. I'll tell you what they said in case you missed it. Number one, if my ask, he gives a figure, it should be 6 months of your salary is an appropriate mahr. Quote, I don't care what anyone says. MashaAllah, as if his opinion has anything to do with Islam. 6 months of mahr, that is appropriate. The other one then responds by saying, no, I'll give her a Quran and a date. So one's gone from 50,000, the other one's gone to Quran and a date, as in like a hujur. Then the other one says, I'll give 100,000. He said, well, when you got married, did you give 100,000? I said, no, I gave 50 euros. These people are playing around with a mas'ala shar'iyya, with something that is important to the hurma of a woman. But if you're 16 and impressionable, if you're 18 and you're digesting this nonsense content online because, hey, two Muslims have a show together and they get to talk about Muslim matters, your akhlaq and your deen and your marriage can be ruined by these things. As parents, you should know what nonsense is being said, and you should know the way the Quran sets up this issue. Completely distanced to false hadith, completely distanced to this nonsense. One more time, Adnan, if you don't mind.
A reasonable mahr is 6 months of pay. So if you get 2,000 euros, 12,000 euros. Okay, that is a reasonable mahr. I don't care what anyone says. Yeah.
Shut up, blood. I'm gonna give her a Quran and a date. And a little kid. No, I'm only messing.
If my wife, from what I know now, asked for 100k, I'd pay 100k.
But did you pay 100k?
No, I paid 50 euros.
So it's easy for you to say.
And أقلهم مهرا
أكثرهم بركة.
Yeah.
And then, mashallah, they quote hadith, and all of a sudden it sanctifies everything that they've said. Did you see the problem? Now, when you enter with this sort of attitude, the next one, Adnan, which one are you going to play? Not the one with, not Mahr Ali Khan, or the other one. You ready with it? Yeah, okay, before you play it, now I just want to let you know that this page is a spoof. The couple are making fun of the way in which some Muslim couples talk to one another. Yes? Now I know this, but you may not know this until I give you this context. Nevertheless, I just want you to see the way in which they're saying in their lives, this is how they've seen most Muslim couples address. Their whole page is like this. It's like a fake argument between husband and wife, but they're putting it to show you the way in which they've experienced their own parents talk to one another, their own uncles and aunties talk to one another, their own grandparents. You understand? Are you ready? Now, if you have a bad attitude and you misunderstand the hurmah of your partner, when you enter into a relationship, this is how you end up speaking with one another. Go ahead. From the beginning, inshallah.
Oh, because when I say something, just don't manipulate and don't twist my words, okay? You promise me? Promise, that's it. Okay. Didn't your mom teach you how to cook?
Yes, she did. What?
Okay.
Why?
So why is your mom's food so nice? But why is your food like why is your food like a punishment? Like, why is it like every time I eat your food is like a test from Allah?
Wallahi, the only thing that's a punishment is your voice. It's giving me the right ick.
But I don't understand. I go to your mom's house, her food is so nice, but your food is like, why is Allah testing me? Do you know what I mean? It's like,
He's not testing you. He wants you to start fasting Mondays and Thursdays. Yalla, go.
start first.
Go find food.
Well, like this rate, I'm gonna fast 7 days a week.
Okay, believe me, you get on my right nerve. You really do. Leave me alone.
Should I pay for some cooking lessons or something?
Yeah, you go get cooking lessons. How about you cook for us for once?
My mom didn't teach me though.
It's funny. Like, is your food is like a test from Allah? As a joke, it's funny. What they're trying to show you is that this is how Muslim couples, in their experience, talk to one another. And there's about 50 videos like this where they're having this banter back and forth, but there's a reason what they're trying to show you is how bad the akhlaq is between people. Now, I don't think that that conversation is actually too alien from the reality of what many people end up having there. I've seen many a time. I've seen in my own life many a time that this sort of conversation is between husbands and wives. In my own life, as well as when you have to deal with breakdown of marriages and you see the way in which people converse with one another. If you have entered into the marriage thinking that you have bought her, or she thinks she has sold herself, can you imagine the way in which people are going to deal with one another? This is not too alien. Now, what I want to show you is the way the Quran presents how the relationship ought to be between people, and particularly, what is the maqsad, what is the ultimate goal, the ultimate objective of marriage and a relationship between husband and wife. And if you can see these verses, the way in which we would start to think about our relationships would be in accordance with this very lofty goal that is there between us. Then I want to be able to show you some other ahadith, and I want to show you what our ulama say about this lofty gharad, in particular, the reason for the mahr that has been mentioned. So you've seen the hadith that is attributed to Imam al-Rida alayhi salam about the reason for mahr. She is ba'i'atun nafsuha. She is selling herself. And he is mushtari, he is purchasing her, according to the narration. Now I want to show you the way the Quran shows us what the relationship ought to be. Please open your Qurans to chapter number 30, Surah Al-Rum, verse 21, and you will see what our fuqaha say is the ultimate goal of marriage. And if our marriage is creating this, we are prospering through this, then know that our marriage is in accordance with the Quran itself. Verse number 21. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُمْ مِنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا. And one of his signs is that he created mates for you from amongst yourselves, that you may find peace in them. Sakina. لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا. The ultimate goal of marriage, the maqsad, is for you to have sukoon between yourselves. That can only come with respect, honor, dignity, and love. If those qualities and features are not present, then sukoon cannot be present in your relationship. If a person enters into the marriage with this goal and treats a person with this goal, then they will actually ultimately reach there. وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. And he put between you love and compassion. إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. In a famous hadith, Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi, says, whenever I entered into the house, all my grief, all my woes left just by looking at my wife Fatima al-Zahra, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhima. This is the way in which it should be. Please turn in your Qur'ans to Surah Al-Furqan, chapter number 25 of the Qur'an, verse number 74. And in here you will see another ayah of the way in which we should see the goal of marriage, the goal of the relationship that exists between us. Chapter number 25, Al-Furqan, verse number 75. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Verse number 74, my apologies. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَالَّذِينَ يَقُولُونَ رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ. And they say, now these are the qualities of Ibad al-Rahman, those who are truly the servants of the All-Merciful. There's a sequence that starts all the way from verse 63 to here. Now, amongst the qualities of Ibad al-Rahman, the true servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is that they make dua on behalf of their own family members, and between themselves and for themselves. وَالَّذِينَ يَقُولُونَ رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا. By now you know, I've told you many times, هَبْ لَنَا, hab, wahab, is a type of gift which is spiritual. It's not a type of gift that is material, physical. It is a spiritual gift. هَبْ لَنَا, grant us, min azwajina, in our partners, wa dhurriyatina, and in our offspring, qurrata a'yun, a joy in our eyes. Allah yarhamak. And that is the way that we are supposed to be with one another, a joy for the other. How many times a person I have seen in my own life is so nice in front of everybody. MashaAllah, what akhlaq. Says salamu alaykum, smiles nicely, comes home, not a smile on his face to his own family members. So generous with his time to the community, doesn't spend any time, proper time, bringing up his family. Subhanallah. You are supposed to be, and I am supposed to be, and the sisters are supposed to be with their family, with their partners, a joy to be with. Not a joy to be with strangers. That comes later. But first and foremost should be you to be a joy in the eyes, the apple of the eye in regards to your partner. If you are not that, ask yourself, why are you that in public and with others, with your friends, with your other members of the community? A joy to be around. But when it comes to your own family members, I am not a joy to be around. I'm harsh. I am dull. I'm not fun. There's no romance. There's no joy in that relationship. What is wrong with me that I act so well with others and people want to be around me in public, but in private my own family does not want to be around me? What is it? Can you see the goal of marriage here? Can you see the way in which we're supposed to mold ourselves? There are many other ayat which I could show you, but ultimately here, these are the maqasid of marriage, the ultimate objectives and goals in the way in which we're supposed to be. Now, the mahr needs to be along these ayat. You understand? If you're going to set the bar, the goals of marriage as being sukoon between yourselves, the mahr should be that which entails the creation of sukoon between yourselves, not necessarily the creation of enmity between yourselves. Do you understand? If the ultimate goal is for it to be a joy between yourselves, marriage to be a joy for yourselves in the way in which you perceive the other, if the mahr which starts out the marriage contract is a cause of friction or a cause of lack of dignity or a cause of lack of joy between yourselves, then how can the rest of the marriage retain that ultimate gharad, that ultimate maqsad between yourselves? When you are teaching your children to prepare for marriage, you have to show them these ayat. This is what you ultimately must become as a human being. Now you might say, I can't help it whether I am beloved by another person. Actually, do you know what? The qualities of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam is exactly that they were a joy to be around. They were beloved by others. Who recited for us Ziyarat Aminullah? Tell me. Ziyarat Aminullah is the ziyarah that you recite for Imam Ali alayhi salam when you go to Najaf, correct? This was first recited by our 4th Imam, who taught it to our 5th Imam, who taught it to Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari. This is how we reach it. So the 4th Imam is describing whom? Ali ibn Abi Talib. Do you know one of the lines in Ziyarat Aminullah? Imam says, Ya Ali, you are mahbubatan fis samai wal ard. You are beloved by the people of the heavens and the earth. The qualities of a mu'min is that you are beloved. People love to be around you. They enjoy your company. Whom should enjoy your company the most? Your wife or your husband. If that person is not enjoying your company the most, you are doing something wrong. You are not doing something right. If you're not being a joy to your partner, then we are doing something wrong. If our partners find more pleasure and more comfort and more sukoon with others, we are doing something wrong in the way in which our relationship is. Think about these things very carefully. If we were to imbue our children with this preparation for marriage, it could change the way in which we are existing. Last hadith I want to be able to mention, and then I want to read to you a phenomenal set of statements from Ayatollah Ibrahim Amini. May Allah grant him the highest position in Jannah. This hadith is a very interesting one. I told you I'm going to mention to you 1 or 2 explicit narrations because we need to know what exists within our books. We also need to couple it with the Quran and first see how the Quran speaks about these matters. So the hadith comes to us from our 6th Imam, Jaffer ibn Muhammad as-Sadiq, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi. And this hadith is very interesting. I believe this hadith, from the matan is very, very sound and very deep. It may be problematic, but I think it needs to be understood because the Imam isn't talking about himself, he's talking about the attitude of some men. But the narration is explicit in its sexuality. So again, please take it in the context that this is an Imam speaking, and we need to know that these are important discussions for us to be able to have. عن الصادق عليه السلام قال إنما صار الصداق على الرجل دون المرأة. The reason that sidaq, the mahr, has been placed upon the man and not on the woman, إن كان فعلهما واحدا, even though their act is the same. Between a husband and wife, they do the same things in their relationship. وَإِن كَانَ فَعَلَهُمَا وَاحِدًا, even though their acts are the same, the sidaq is upon the man and not upon the woman. لِأَنَّ الرَّجُلِ إِذَا قَضَى حَاجَتَهُ مِنْهَا قَامَ عَنْهَا. When a man satisfies himself of his desires from her, he gets up, قَامَ عَنْهَا وَلَمْ يَنْتَظَرْ فَرَاغَهَا, and he doesn't even wait for her to finish. Finish here is meaning orgasm. The reason as to why, according to Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, and I'll explain this in the next part of the hadith, the reason as to why the mahr is on the man is because his attitude towards the woman, إِذَا قَضَى حَاجَتَهُ مِنْهَا, when he finishes his desires with her, قَامَ عَنْهَا, he just gets up. He is finished. وَلَمْ يَنْتَظَرْ وَلَمْ يَنْتَظِرْ فَرَاغَهَا, he doesn't even wait for her to be satisfied. فَصَارَ الصِّدَاقُ عَلَيْهِ دُونُهَا لِذَلِكَ, and so it is upon him, not her. What do you think this hadith means? The hadith means that generally, or at least prior to Islam, the way men treated women was nothing more than something for sexual satisfaction. In order to break him out of that attitude, he has to be invested in her in more than just his sexual desires. Understand? So the reason why Allah Jalla Jalaluhu placed the issue of mahr was to begin the expansion of your reason of interest in her and not limit it to simply sexual desire. And that was the practice, the behavior of men prior to Islam. He doesn't even care about her sexual needs. Very interesting, isn't it? Now, having understood this, what you would say is, well, how should mahr then be? Very important question. Do you know how much mahr is according to sunnah or according to the ahkam in terms of its mustahab, in terms of what you are recommended to give and why? Anyone know the amount? Anyone know the amount? You're all married, you should know this, mashallah. 500 dirham. 500 dirham. Why? Because when the Prophet ﷺ would get married, he would give 500 dirham, and so it became a sunnah. Does anyone know how much 500 dirham is today? Yes. Or the ladies would say, not enough. How much? Take a guess. Huh? £100. $1,200. Think about this very carefully. Very carefully. The sunnah, I'm putting it like this, because just because the Prophet does something, especially in an economic sense where there's inflation and difference of, is that sunnah? We can have that discussion another time. According to many of our fuqaha, or according to the hadith, is 500 dirham. Therefore, it's sunnah. The equivalent is 1,200 US dollars. Probably you can work out, how much is that in pounds approximately? About 1,000 pounds. Now think about this question. Tell me, nowadays, What can a woman do with £1,000? Say again? Nothing. Nothing. Really. Does it even give you 1 month's rent? Doesn't even give you 1 month's rent here. Forget London. Really here. 3 bed in a normal part of Leeds. Does it give you rent? Doesn't give you rent. So what is the purpose of mahr? Well, according to the hadith of what? Imam al-Rida alayhi salam, you are purchasing her body. Correct? If you are purchasing her for £1,000, is she cheap or expensive? Can you see the problem with the hadith? According to the Quran, the ultimate goal of marriage was what? Sukoon and joy. Mawaddatan wa rahma. If you are giving a mahr of £1,000, does that give her sukoon? No. No, it doesn't. Because the purpose should be what? That she has a degree of security that if something was to go wrong, God forbid, she has enough for herself to fall back on. You understand? If you're going to give her mahr, and it's in the context of creating sukoon, if she doesn't have sukoon from that, then is it truly a mahr? No. Can you understand? So it's not about overpaying for the sake of it, and I could have shown you, if I had more time, videos where sisters are asking for $50,000. And I can show you that video again. What does he say? I paid 50 euros for his mahr. What an embarrassment of a human being. Now maybe that's all he could afford, but he seemed to be joking enough about it that he's happy with that. You understand? So the purpose of the mahr, the illah of the mahr, is not that you're purchasing her and she is selling herself. It is for what? Sukoon. It is for what? Joy. It is for what? Mawadda. It is for what? Rahmah. And if you cannot enter into a relationship in accordance with that, then maybe you shouldn't be entering into the relationship at all. You're not ready yet. You're not mature enough for it yet. Now to conclude, I want to read to you what Ayatollah Ibrahim Amini, rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh, says about the philosophy of mahr. And you can see how it's in line with the Quranic dalil, evidence, and not a false narration that has reached us in this book. He says, some may question the tashri', the legislation of mahr, and declare men and women physically and instinctually need each other. Because of this, they are attracted to one another and consequently they want to get married. Taking this into consideration, what is the illah, the reason for the mahr? He says the following. First point. Even though men and women physically need each other and naturally desire one another, each of them have special characteristics. One characteristic of a woman is her delicacy and her beauty, which is one aspect of man's attraction to her. The most important factor of women's influence is their beauty. These are his words. The most important factor of woman's influence is her beauty, something for which men have a unique regard. A woman intrinsically, fitri, understands this and thus utilizes, exploits various means of her beauty and adornment in order to appear most beautiful, in order to penetrate into the man's heart. A second quality of a woman is that even though they have sexual needs similar to men, they are stronger in masking their instinctive desires. A woman prefers to permeate the heart of a man and cause him to become enamored with her in order to gain hand in marriage. Makeup, flirtatiousness of a woman originates from this issue. However, men are weak against their desires and cannot conceal their desires. This is why they propose to women. Men desire and yearn for women and pursue them. When a man realizes that a woman desires his devotion, he reveals this to her in order to prove his love. By any means necessary, he spends money in order to be able to marry her. The contract of Mahr is one such means. Is this in line with the illah of the hadith or in line with the illah of the Quran? Which one? The contract of Mahr is one such means. In order to prove his affection, his honor to his wife, and to attain her heart, he bestows upon her the gift called the Mahr. This is according to Ayatollah Ibrahim Amini, one reason. Second reason is the following, and we conclude with this. The contract of Mahr gives the woman a relative amount of peace and ease of mind, so that she may perform duties that are placed upon her. Even though when a man and a woman are married, they pledge to be faithful to one another, cooperate and train their children, instances have been observed when this may not correctly occur. This issue can be elucidated on with an analogy. Men are like the planters and the women are the plantation. He plants his seed in the woman's womb and subsequently he is technically free to go his own way. Canonically, legally and morally, men are responsible towards their wives and children. However, because nature has not given man responsibilities, he can leave his wife whenever he wants. Thus, Allah has placed a financial investment in order to not make himself free of that woman. However, a woman is not free in this manner and obliged to endure the term of pregnancy, delivery, and all the duties after birth. During this time, she needs a means of livelihood, home, food, and clothes. What can this woman do without this situation? Naturally, women should be apprehensive about such responsibilities. It might be that one reason for the legislation of Mahr is to foster in women a reasonable amount of security and ease regarding their livelihoods. Is this in regards to the hadith or does it meet with the Quran? It meets with the Quran, doesn't it? Can you see? Ayatollah Ibrahim Amini takes two views here. The first is in regards to her beauty, and you are purchasing her beauty. She is selling you that beauty. That seems to come from the hadith of Imam Rida alayhi salam, apparently. The other one is security for her, honor for her, looking after her, giving her sukoon. Where does this come from? From the Quran. Can you see? Now you are at liberty to accept or to reject. I humbly recommend to you that you have the Quranic view, that you understand the way in which this marriage ought to be. When you speak to your daughters about Mahr, this is the illah I want you to take. When you speak to your husbands, or sons, about the illah, this is the illah that you should take. And the whole of the marriage can be based on the idea of sukoon, on the idea of joy, on the idea of mawaddah, on the idea of rahmah. And if we can get this, then inshallah the marriages in our communities will be successful and they will not break down as easily as the ones that we are seeing in front of our eyes. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the ziyarah of Imam al-Rida alayhi salam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make the marriages in our community a success. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the tawfiq to be able to understand the reasonings in His law and to make sure that we uphold them as parents, as brides, and as grooms to be. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make our families strong and united. Walhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa salli ya Rabbi ala Muhammadin wa alihi at-tahirin. In honor of our 8th Imam, please recite a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli